The United States of America will know that these dreamers are part of that history and that their stories will be there to make judgments about us as to how we have responded to their greatness. Novella Vladimir says, I am an AP scholar. I'm a distinguished high school graduate. I'm a cum laude student. I'm a leader. I'm a recipient of scholarship through merit and circumstance. I'm also an illegal immigrant. Well, allow me to rephrase. I'm an illegal immigrant until the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals and executive action by President Obama gave me the opportunity to live as a resident here in the United States. DACA has opened many doors for dreamers such as myself. Honestly, it has made the path to success miles more tangible, inspiring me to be the best I can. Even when the odds plotted against me, DACA was and is there to give a helping hand regarding my academic record. Either I am writing to boast about my accomplishment or to ask for pity in my situation. I'm here to thank anyone and everyone who made DACA not only possible, but dreamers' dreams come true. I'm ready to give thanks for the faith that creators of DACA gave me when the compassion of the world seemed to turn a blind eye my way. With this letter, I only hope to help the new presidential administration understand why DACA is a vital part of every dreamer's life. As a poverty-stricken female immigrant, I have moved mountains to get to where I am today, but this never would have been possible without the assistance from DACA. Playing an important role in my life, DACA is a pinnacle to the rights I cherish every day. Because of DACA, I've been able to get a job to assist my family. It was not easy, working 30-hour plus shifts, only to be welcomed by house chores and schoolwork, especially since I graduated from the magnet school, the Science Academy of South Texas, a school notorious for its workload. My hopes lie in the generosity of this nation continues to allow all dreamers a fighting chance for our future, our hopes and our aspirations to become more than just dreamers. Continues, please let it be known that all dreamers appreciate the assistance this nation has given us through DACA. Futures had been open for dreamers who once on uncertain roads. Thanks to the help of DACA, I hope this nation does not give up on us. I hope this nation continues to believe in its dreamers. I hope this nation continues to see why DACA is necessary. After all, this nation is all that most dreamers have. Our lives are under the weight of this country's mercy. Although as much as we work, as much as we learn, as much as we pray, all we can do is hope, dream for a hopeful tomorrow, a brighter road ahead, a chance to dream again. Nayala Vladimir. Nayala in this statement talks about praying, and that's why I'm so glad I mentioned at the beginning that the B's, the three B's, the Bibles, the badges, and the business community are so supportive of giving relief to the dreamers. Let's talk about the Bibles. I talked about the Gospel of Matthew, the parable of the Good Samaritan, the dignity and worth of every person, the spark of divinity, that Christ coming down, bringing his divinity to humanity, enabled us, our humanity, to participate in his divinity, and that is that spark that we all have, every single one of us. So we have to respect it in others, but be responsible for it in ourselves. And that is the challenge that we have. Hope, sitting there between faith and charity, the goodness of others. We all have hope that when we have needs, we believe, we have faith that others will be there for us. And that's what America is about. America is great because America is good. I'll say it over and over again. This fabulous, greatest country in the history of the world. Think about it. Our founders, how courageous they were. They decided to declare war on the greatest naval power then in the world, the British Navy, the British military. They declared in the Declaration of Independence their grievances against the king, but they also stated their aspirations about people being created equal. No country had been founded on that principle before. Inalienable rights under God, just remarkable, bestowed on them by our Creator. These are remarkable people. And then they fought the war, they won the war, they established our founding documents. My daughter wrote a movie on it. Well, she didn't write it because it was written by our founders, but produced a movie on the words that made America. Our Declaration, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. And thank God they had the brilliance to make our Constitution amendable. And in its being amendable, it became this incredible document with the Bill of Rights and then others that we take an oath to protect and defend. At the same time as they did that, they created the Great Seal of the United States of America. I referenced it earlier. It's on the dollar bill. You see that triangle with the eye? It used to scare me when I was little. What's that? A triangle, a pyramid with an eye? But under it, it says, Novus Ordo, O-R-D-O, Seclorum. Catholics know that seclorum, that means forever and ever and ever. But in this, it's a new order for the ages. They had so much confidence in what they had established and what they were doing that was so new and fresh to the world. They became a beacon to the world, but in doing this new order for the ages, they had confidence and optimism that this would last forever because it was predicated on the idea that every generation would take responsibility to make the future better for the next. Said it earlier, the American dream. People flock to our shores, bring their aspirations, hopes, determination, courage to make the future better for their families. And in adopting, their traits were like American traits, characteristics of optimism, hope, and courage, and making the future better. And all these newcomers to our shores, they made America more American with their commitment to a better future for their families. And that continues to this day. And these people now, these young people, are called dreamers. Their parents had a dream for them to bring them to our country. But they completely adopted to our way of always being dreamers about a better future in our country. They learned from the American people. They taught the American people. It's a beautiful relationship. And now we have an opportunity to show our greatness as a country, to honor the vows of our founders, the courage they had, to find a path, a solution, a result, so that we can put this aside and address other issues that relate to immigration, which are a bigger picture, more complicated, take more time, require more public debate. Why can't we just do this? This is discreet. Congresswoman Michelle Lujan Grisham, the chair of the Hispanic Caucus, said this so beautifully when we testified before the Rules Committee on the immigration, on the DREAM Act. She said, think of this bill like CHIP. CHIP is our Children's Health Insurance Program. It's about the children. It's not a bill that talks about universal health care and the whole health care system of our country. It's about the children. We have the immigration issue is similar to being a big comprehensive issue. But then we have this little piece that is for the children. I think it was the perfect analogy. CHIP is healthcare for the children. It doesn't address the whole healthcare system, changes that people may want to make or improve or change. It's about the children. It's an easy path for us to go down, recognizing that it is not a substitute for what we need to do to address immigration reform in our country, but a first step, not a step instead of, and a confidence-building step that we can find common ground in a bipartisan way. We must, if it's going to be sustainable, just as the bill was in 1986 that President Reagan improved upon with his family fairness initiatives. So that's why let's just think of it about the children. We should always be thinking about the children. They are the future. They own the future. They are it. And when children come to Washington, D.C., and they visit and see how we honor our founders, George Washington, Lincoln, later to save the Union, Lincoln, but earlier Thomas Jefferson, et cetera, and walk these halls and see tributes to people who went before, we say, most cases, this is about respecting the contributions these people made to our country, especially our big monuments on the wall, and most recently, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. there. We honor them, we learn from them, we value them, but what we do here is values-based and how they taught us, but it's about the future. And this is about how we can go into the future, making distinctions, discerning, having the ability to say, there's some things we can get done, let's do them. Other things take more time, let's build confidence, build bridges in what we do. Again, always trying to do it with bipartisanship, with transparency, so people know what the debate is and what's in the bill, and with that brings unity to our country. I think that is very possible. I'm very proud to read these statements into the record, and I will continue to do so. But during the night when I was thinking and praying so hard about our dreamers, I thought maybe we should just pray all day on the floor of Congress. Maybe I should bring my rosary, blessed by the Pope. Do we have a statement? Pope's statement. Blessed by His Holiness Pope Francis, or the one before that, Benedict. But I have had the honor of and privilege of receiving rosaries blessed by several popes in my lifetime. But I always remember Pope Benedict, when he came, he spoke so beautifully. He spoke so beautifully, and his first encyclical is called God is Love. And in it he quotes St. Augustine, who 17 centuries ago said, any government that is not formed to promote justice is just a bunch of thieves. That's what St. Augustine said 17 centuries ago. Benedict, His Holiness, goes on to say, sometimes it's hard to define what justice is, but in doing so we must beware of the dazzling blindness of power and special interest. That's what he said. But this doesn't have any of that. This has social justice, it has camaraderie, it has good spirit, and it's based on faith, hope, and charity. Pope Francis, when he came, spoke so beautifully, as he always does, about respecting immigrants. And he is living in a much more complicated world of immigrants coming into Europe. But again, respecting the dignity and worth of every person. And he came here in this chamber and spoke about a few subjects. As you recall, one of them was poverty and how we respect the dignity and worth of people that Christ mentioned so many times in the Bible. As we know, Christ mentioned in the poor people are mentioned in the Bible hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times because of how important our responsibility is to them. But he also talked about immigration. He talked about immigration. Do we have that yet? Immigration in a very important way, no? As I get his statement, I will instead read from Gloria Ricconi, a medical assistant from Dallas, Texas. I'm a girl who you graduated next to, a girl who talked to you daily, a girl who has finally decided to step away from the shadows and into the light for you to see her. See me as for who I am, not for someone told you who I would be. I immigrated to the United States when I was a year old with my parents. My parents had taken the decision to immigrate to the USA due to being a country that offered no future for their families. Even though both my parents ran a successful business and my mom had a college education, the violence and underemployment was no future for us. The first place we called home was a small apartment in Dallas, Texas, whom we shared with another family. We lived in Texas for a year, moved to Statesville, North Carolina. We then moved to the outskirts of the little town in the same rundown trailer homes. We had nothing. My parents slept on the floor while I made a makeshift bed out of a piece of cardboard and a blanket. After months of saving up money, my dad finally had enough to rent an apartment near downtown Statesville. After 9 years, we moved again to Texas. Growing up, my parents never hid the fact that I was undocumented for me. They always told me, just because you were not born here does not mean you are any less. You are loved by many, regardless of what you might hear on TV. Those words became my rock when I was in high school. When I was a freshman, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. For months, she struggled trying to find treatment at an affordable rate. Doctors would turn her down simply because of her legal status, even though she offered to negotiate a payment plan. She was dying, and no one seemed to care. Her only sin was to be an undocumented woman with stage 4 cancer. She eventually found treatment, but I had seen firsthand how dehumanizing people can be toward the undocumented. During this time, DACA was put into place and officially opened the door for me. DACA gave me wings. The wings I had hoped for all my life when I was in school. I participated in national pageants, placing us as a national achievement finalist. I graduated high school with a medical assistant certification, became a recipient of the Dream U.S. Scholarship, which helped me pursue my higher education. DACA has also given me a chance to give back to others. Dreamers, the other dreamers, by being an intern at my Undocumented Life blog. U.S. DACA recipients are not here to harm the U.S. The U.S. is our home and will always be our home. We are part of the fabric that makes the American flag. For that, I am willing to come out of the shadows so you can see me. This is, I mean, again, this American dream of making the future better is recurring in all of these stories. And in all of these stories, there has been success. Again, though, it's not just about the dreamers, it's about who we are. Luis Roberto, I talked about Luis already. I gave his speech. We had his speech for his graduating class. I did, okay. Luz Divina, she writes, Luz writes, I came to U.S. from Mexico when I was 2 months old. I didn't know I was undocumented until sophomore year of high school, and I realized I couldn't get a driver's license, apply for a job, go to college programs like all my friends. I felt depressed and oppressed for years until I applied for DACA when President Obama implemented his executive order. I finally had a chance to at the real world. I started a collective in high school named the Luz Divina Collective that helped dreamers in my high school and victims of social injustice in my community. I'm currently trying to get into education, either ethnic studies or maybe both, or art. The announcement of my DACA ending has put me back into a state of depression. I'm trying my hardest to overcome with the help of my friends and family. My dream is to be an educator, activist, and writer to inspire dreamers like myself who are currently or have been in a state of depression due to their legal status. We have to remember how strong the dreamers are, but how fragile some of their existence is when they have no certainty as to what the next steps will be for them. Again, this is all about family, about parents who had the courage to bring their children at an early age to America. This happened 100 years ago. Do you think all of the people who came here all came documented? Maybe we should all look up our ancestry and just find out what the facts are about that. We assume so, but do we really know? And there are many people, as I said earlier, Italians were called wops, without papers. That was a derogatory term. It's disgusting for me to say it, being an Italian American and so proud of my heritage. As I said earlier, we grew up thinking that the world was divided among two people in America, those who were Italian American and those who wanted to be Italian American. Certainly that feels that way in Little Italy in Baltimore, where I grew up, and in San Francisco, that I had the honor to represent. But in any event, we all take pride in our heritage. And that's the best qualification for recognizing the pride that other people take in their heritage. I say this to the Italian Americans all the time. Because I'm so proud to be an Italian American, I understand full well why people from Mexico or Puerto Rico or Africa, wherever they're from, take pride in who they are, their dignity, the authenticity of their heritage and who they are. And in America, the beauty is in the mix. It certainly is in my district. But in some communities, the contributions of immigrants is not as recent and is in others. But in every community, it has made a difference, constantly reinvigorating America. And so when His Holiness Pope Francis came to speak here in the Congress as a Catholic Italian American, that's the essence of my being, it was really a thrilling day. It was for all of us, regardless of our background or our faith. I was particularly thrilled to hear what he said about immigration, but you recall, he talked about Martin Luther King, the march from Selma to Montgomery. He talked about people living in poverty. He talked about a number of subjects, but I'll just speak to what he said about immigration. His Holiness said, and this is all a quote of his, "In recent centuries, millions of people came to this land to pursue their dream of building a future in freedom. We, the people of this continent," because as you know, His Holiness is the first Pope from the Western Hemisphere. We, the people of this continent, are not fearful of foreigners because most of us were once foreigners. I say this to you as the son of immigrants, Italian, by the way, but I say this to you as a son of immigrants, knowing that so many of you are also descendant from immigrants. Tragically, the rights of those who were here long before us were not always respected. For those people and their nations, and from the heart of America's democracy, I wish to reaffirm my highest esteem and appreciation. Those first contacts were often turbulent and violent, but it's difficult to judge the past by the criteria of the present. Nonetheless, when the stranger is in our midst appeals to us, we must not repeat the sins and errors of the past. We must resolve now to live as nobly and as justly as possible, as we educate new generations not to turn their back on our neighbors and everything around us. Building a nation calls us to recognize that we must constantly relate to others, rejecting a mindset of hostility in order to adopt one of reciprocal subsidiarity in a constant effort to do our best. I am confident we can do this. How beautiful. And then he goes on to talk about the, immigration in the rest of the world. And then he says, let us remember the goal. He said, we need to avoid a common temptation nowadays to discard whatever proves troublesome. Let us remember the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so, again, I must admit his whole statement again for the record because it goes on in such a very beautiful, beautiful way. He also talks about climate in there, Laudate Si, which is his first encyclical about God's creation, this planet, and our responsibilities to be good stewards of it. So when I'm talking about His Holiness, get to the Bible's part of it. We talked about the Bible earlier. I thought maybe we could say the rosary on the floor of the house, not just 5 decades, the full rosary, all of the mysteries of the rosary. That's 15 decades of the rosary. But nonetheless, I think these people telling their stories are very prayerful. And so we'll use the time to put their stories on the record. But let me just say how proud I am of the statements made by the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops, their courage in fighting for immigrants across our country, from our cardinals, our bishops, etc., from their esteemed platforms, whether it's the Dreamers or TPS or comprehensive immigration reform. But right now, today, we're talking about the Dreamers. The evangelicals in our country, Reverend Sam Rodriguez's statements have been so spectacular about the spark of divinity that exists in every person that must be respected. Strong supporters of President Trump also believing that it's possible for all of us to have enough goodness in our hearts to get this job done and go past any obstacles that may be there. Again, the Baptist Convention, the Southern Baptist Convention, their leadership, all across the spectrum, of course the Jewish community, across the full spectrum of faith-based organizations, all speaking out and rallying, as people rallied when there was, we first saw the Muslim ban. The people of faith are people of faith. They believe. And they believe that we have obligations to each other. They've spoken out in a very courageous way. In terms of the badges, I told you some stories about Dreamers who have come forth to help with law enforcement. By and large, we have had strong support from the law enforcement community about support for the Dreamers. And the business community, oh my, they have been spectacular in terms of raising the profile, treating their employees who are Dreamers with respect, advocating for them. In this Congress of the United States, they seem to have a strong voice on some issues. I wish they would be listened to as attentively on issues of social justice here. But they do have access. And one of the things I want to praise them for is that I think that the 90%, 80%, 70% ratings of, depending on if it's citizenship or what, but the high numbers across the board for Dreamers would not have been possible without people hearing from the bishops, from law enforcement, and the business community making this a very high-profile issue about how their companies have benefited from the Dreamers and how they truly believe. This is not an issue that is going to go away. It is a value. It's not an issue. It may be a subject for legislation, but this is an American value that is deeply felt across the board. And I am determined that the stories of at least some of these Dreamers, can't do 800,000, although I'm willing to take the time, that might lose impact after a while if some of these great stories. Listen to Maneri. I'm 18 years old and from Los Angeles. I just graduated high school and be attending UCLA to study political science in the fall. Being an undocumented student has been tough. Coming to this country at 6 years old completely changed my life. I learned English. Doing well in school was a battle since everyone in my family only spoke Spanish. However, being a dream also shaped who I am, what I stand for. After graduation, I hope to go to law school. I already told you this story, but it bears repeating. I dream that one day our immigration status doesn't find our path. Alonzo, growing up undocumented in Utah, truly shaped me as the person I am today. My experiences growing up in the margins of society inform the work I do and the work I seek to continue doing in this life. I am passionate about working with undocumented students and families and strive to share all of my knowledge and experiences with the undocumented community as well as the community as a whole. I was born in Peru and immigrated to the United States when I was 11. I arrived in Utah with my brother to reunite with our mother, who had come to the U.S. a year before our arrival. 6 months after arriving in the U.S. with a tourist visa, my visa expired. So it came into the country with legal status. And this is something I think is really important. Not everybody who is undocumented came here in an undocumented fashion. Some of the documentation has expired, and in the case of DACA, just a question of when the mail hit and what day it was received by the government. Again, I came as one of the 11 million. I was 12 and hardworking student, earning good grades and working toward a future that would allow me to repay my mom for all of her sacrifices. As a high school student, I enrolled in the honors and AP courses, which challenged me and furthered my plans to earning higher education. I graduated from high school with a diploma of merit and went to the University of Utah, where I would major in sociology and be mentored by incredible individuals. Most pointedly, Matt Bradley, PhD, rest in peace, 2012, Caitlin Cahill, PhD, and David Seresser, PhD. My mentors showed me that my work, insight, and contributions as an undocumented student are important. Now imagine this child came in documented but became undocumented when the visa expired. My mentors showed me work are important. I truly owe them for showing me that I matter for being who I am. In 2013, I graduated from University of Utah with honors BS in sociology, Bachelor of Science in sociology, and 2000 with a master's in education. With an emphasis on higher education administration. I'm currently Dreamer Program Coordinator for University of Utah, which is the first center for Dreamers in the state of Utah. God bless you, Utah. In the future, I would like to pursue PhD in sociology with a focus on immigration and labor studies. This is important because once again, as has been consistent in these themes, the Dreamers are grateful for the mentoring they have received from people in our country, some of whom may share their heritage, most of whom did not. And that's the beautiful thing about the Dreamers. They know that their dream, they have a dream because somebody else had a plan for their own dream that inspired the Dreamers to have their plan. When Yori Hernandez was only 3 years old, her family brought her to the United States from Mexico. Yori grew up in the town of Coos Bay in Oregon. In high school, an honor roll student who was very active in her community. Yori went on to attend the University of Portland, where she graduated with a bachelor's degree in social work. Yuri is now a graduate student at the University of Michigan School of Social Work. She's planning to graduate with a master's in social work in the fall of 2017. In her spare time, she tutors and mentors high school students. Yuri dreams of becoming a social worker and giving back to her community. Ray Pinedo was brought to America when he was 2 years old. the first in his family to attend college and a devout Catholic. Ray is now a priest in the Cathedral of Christ the King in Atlanta, Georgia. And if DACA is eliminated, Father Ray will lose his legal status and could be deported back to Mexico, a tragedy for Father Ray and his congregation. After most divisive election in recent memory, Father Ray and other DACA recipients have a key role to play in healing the differences that divide us. Oscar Conejo Jr. was brought to Park City, Utah when he was 5 years old. He was an excellent student throughout his childhood and now attends Dartmouth. If DACA is eliminated, Oscar will lose his legal status, could be deported back to Mexico, a country he hasn't lived in since he was 5 years old. Will America be stronger if we deport Oscar? Will America be stronger if we deport Oscar? Or if he stays here and achieves his dream of becoming an educator? The answer is clear. DACA works. Lizette Diaz is just 6 years old when her family brought her to the U.S. from Chile. Growing up in Long Island, Lizette excelled in school and was involved in her community. She went to attend Harvard, where she received numerous awards and participated in a variety of extracurricular activities. Lizette recently graduated Harvard with honors. Lizette and other dreamers have so much to contribute to our country, but Donald Trump and other Republicans have made their agenda clear. They want to shut down DACA and DAPA and deport hundreds of thousands of dreamers and parents of American children. That's Lizette's view. I hope that we have a better understanding of where the president may be on this. We don't want Lizette to be deported back to Chile, a country where she hasn't lived since she was 6 years old. When Cynthia Sanchez was just 7 years old, her family came to the United States from Mexico. Cynthia grew up in Denver, Colorado, was an excellent student. She wanted to attend the University of Denver, where she received numerous awards and scholarships and an active volunteer. In 2010, Cynthia graduated from college with a degree in cognitive neuroscience, which is a double major in psychology and biology, as well as a minor in chemistry. In 2013, she applied for DACA, was approved that summer. By September, Cynthia was working at Northwestern University in Chicago, doing clinical research in the Department of Medicine's Division of Cardiology. Her research focuses on improving treatment for patients who suffer from heart failure. Cynthia said, DACA has meant a new realm of opportunity for me. It has opened new doors for me. It has allowed me to once again see my dreams as reality. I truly believe that if those opposed to DACA or the DREAM Act had a chance to sit and chat with undocumented students, their opinions might change. They would see capable, smart, hardworking individuals who are Americans in every sense of the word, love this country, and want to contribute to its prosperity. After all, this is our home. That's really very beautiful. I do believe that the more our colleagues know the dreamers, the better it will be for our country. Vashley Lamadrid came to the United States from Mexico when she was only 5 years old. Despite her family's modest means, Vashley felt safe and excelled in school. Math was her best subject. She nearly perfect scores on standardized tests in middle school. Vashley discovered the love of engineering. She excelled academically and was active in her community. Vashley has gone on to attend Arizona State University. Again, I mentioned a great school. Because of her immigration status, she does not qualify for any government assistance and is to pay out-of-pocket tuition despite having lived in Arizona for most of her life. To help pay for her education, Vashley decided to crowdfund her college education. Vashley shared her story online, and this brought in enough contributions to pay for her tuition. She is currently in her second year of college. In her first semester, she made the dean's list with 3.79 GPA in the Ira Fulton School of Engineering. Thanks to DACA, Vashley is able to work to support herself and volunteer in her community. As a result of her volunteer work, Vashley has decided that she wants to become a science student. Okay, so I have been going through some of these rather quickly in order to get as many of them on the record as possible. But I do want to change my pace a little bit because some of these stories are so emotion-filled, and I can place the statement in the record, but I want to deliver the stories. I'm trying to be respectful of other people's time, but I'm also trying to be respectful of the challenge that we face and the need for us to find a solution which is clear in sight for our dreamers. Fernando's family came to the United States when he was 9 years old. In high school, Fernando was an AP scholar and received the International Baccalaureate diploma and the Achievement Award in Foreign Language for French. Fernando continued to excel academically at Santa Clara University, where he graduated cum laude with a double major in biology and French. Now a third-year doctoral student in San Francisco, UC San Francisco, the ultimate fabulous place, right? Fernando, it's very hard to get in, works at the UCSF Helen Diller Family Comprehensive Cancer Center, where he is working hard to provide new insights into many diseases and disorders. Again, giving back, giving back. Denise Rojas, in 1990, Denise tells her story that when she was an infant, her parents carried her across the southwest border with the hope of giving her and her siblings a better life. Just think of this family, so courageous. Denise's family settled in Fremont, California. Denise said, in her words, in grade school, I recall feeling different from my peers. My skin color was darker, my English was stilted, I was poor, and I was undocumented. In 2012, Denise writes, when President Obama established DACA, Denise's life changed. As a DACA recipient, Denise's dreams finally seemed within reach. She was able to apply to medical schools that before would have turned her away because of her immigration status. This meant that she could focus on pursuing a career in medicine and no longer fear the possibility of losing the only home she had ever known. Denise said, I have pledged allegiance to this nation's values since my first day of school. I consider the United States my home. Furthermore, serving others has instilled in me the notion that everyone deserves the opportunity for prosperity. I thus aim to dedicate my life to serving others as a physician and continuing to be a voice for immigrants. Reading Denise's story about her being concerned in grade school, I recall feeling different from my peers. My skin color was darker, my English was stilted. I'm reminded of my own grandson. He's Irish, English, whatever, and Italian-American. He's the mix. But he looks more like the other side of the family, shall we say. And when he had his sixth birthday, he had a very close friend whose name is Antonio, who's from Guatemala, and he has beautiful tan skin, beautiful brown eyes, and the rest. And this was such a proud day for me because when my grandson blew out the candles on his cake, they said, did you make a wish? And he said, yes, I made a wish. He said, well, what is your wish? He said, I wish I had brown skin and brown eyes like Antonio. So beautiful, so beautiful. The beauty is in the mix. The face of the future for our country is all American, and that has many versions. Coq Long Skull. None of my friends from my hometown know. He said, my parents raised me to be gritty, never to complain or take handouts. I didn't want to have a victim mentality or be known for being undocumented. But I realized that sharing my story would be therapeutic, raise awareness, and help other underprivileged people. I came to America when I was 6 years old. My parents grew up poor and risked so much to move us here with hopes of giving us a better life. My dad is a waiter in a small restaurant, which is enough to put food on the table and clothes on our backs. We pay taxes, abide by all laws, and don't live on welfare. As for me, I can't legally work, drive, fly, or have health insurance. I've missed out on numerous opportunities because of my situation. Fortunately, I was able to pursue college. Fast forward 4 years, I have graduated magna cum laude in computer engineering from Wichita State University. I was the top of my class, #1 in my major, wrote 2 first author papers, won research awards, and had patent pending. Consequently, I was accepted into graduate school at Columbia University. However, due to my status, I'm unable to obtain a stipend to continue my education. Receiving DACA would grant me the opportunity to acquire the funding I need, provide for my family, and master my craft to realize my full potential. But due to election results, applying for DACA is simply not a favorable option anymore. Without DACA, many live in daily fear of deportation. I've had friends whose families were torn apart. This is Coq Leon Skull. There are genuine everyday struggles, and it's easy to dismiss it because it's not happening to your family. To truly emphasize, you need to dig deep and allow yourself to feel our pain and our anxiety. This is a very important message for us to dig deep and experience their pain and anxiety. Many non-Native Americans seem to forget that they too have immigration in their blood. Just like everyone else, we simply want an opportunity to contribute to the only home we know. Ironically, I enjoyed the adversity. I feel alive under pressure. I am unfazed and I'm undocumented. I'm going nowhere. He's not leaving. Gladys Klomka, Phillipsburg, New Jersey. Patience and heartache is how I would describe my past. I was 2 when my family made the most important decision for us. Moving to the U.S. meant a second chance for me. If we had stayed in Mexico, my folks would have made a decision to give me up for adoption. We settled in New Jersey for economic relief. Unfortunately, at the age of 4, my innocence was stolen from me. I was sexually molested by a 16-year-old boy, but my parents didn't report it. They didn't understand the law for fear of deportation. Both my parents worked full-time to keep a roof over our heads. I wasn't able to go off to college financially or drive or travel. I got used to doors slamming in my face, Gladys writes. I was about 14 when my parents explained to me about our status, confused about my future. I decided to push harder. I finished school, worked full-time, and contributed back to the community. I received a taxpayer ID issued by the IRS in 1997. I always thought it was funny that the government will take our money but not let us work legally in this country. I applied for DACA in 2012. I still remember the day I opened my approval letter. My father said, "Now I don't have to worry about you." I now own my own home, car, and I work in the healthcare system. After Election Day, I wondered if this dream would soon end. It's been hard reality check that privileges could be taken away. I hope for other young dreamers and undocumented children like myself to make this leap, to push that door open again, to know a dream of wanting more is not impossible. This is one of the DACAs that I met, one of the dreamers I met at the State of the Union. Perhaps you remember, America is her name. She was the guest of David Price of North Carolina, and she spoke at our press event with the Dreamers. America emigrated to the U.S. when she was 2 years old and has lived in Raleigh, North Carolina for 22 years. Thanks to DACA, she was able to earn a bachelor's and master's degrees. She now teaches English as a second language at Sanderson High School in Raleigh. She was just so lovely. We thanked David Price for introducing her to us. Another guest at that same press conference, as some of you may recall, was the guest of Senator Kamala Harris. Danae Joseph is her name. Danae is a DACA recipient who came to America from Belize when she was 7 years old, without her mother, father, or siblings. She attended the University of California, Los Angeles, where she advocated for the creation of an immigration attorney position and worked to increase financial aid for undocumented youth across the USA system. I wish you could have heard her personally tell her story with such intellect and such passion. She goes on here to say, as a Young People for Fellow, Danae addressed undocumented youth's educational access and retention. Her story was featured in the LA Magazine's historic immigration issue and is currently on display as part of the Undocumented Stories exhibit at downtown UCLA Labor Center. She's a communications coordinator for UndocuBlack. UndocuBlack Network is a resource to us of many of the dreamers who are black, where she advocates for the representation of undocu-black immigrants within the mainstream immigrant narrative. She aspires to be a human rights attorney, advocating for the rights of the most marginalized around the globe. I mention in here that her story is featured in LA Magazine's historic immigration issue and is on display at the downtown UCLA Labor Center. And now it will be part of the congressional record. Miriam Ochoa Garbe she said, I'm 18 years old, and I'm a DACA student currently enrolled at the University of California, Riverside. I come from a Mexican background. I was born in the Mexican state of Michoacan. I have been living in the United States since I was 2. I went to preschool, kinder, elementary, intermediate, and high school in the state of California. I've always loved school. I remember being a little girl and getting home from school, and the first thing I did was start my homework. I remember that as early as elementary school, this test called GATE. It was supposed to be the smart kids test, and every year I passed it. I remember being an honor student. My parents were very persistent on me getting good grades because that meant a better future. It wasn't until I was in high school where I realized that maybe it was going to take more than just good grades to go to college. I became really aware that I was undocumented. I became fearful that I was going to have a better future, not going to have a better future because I was undocumented. I knew that financially my parents were going to be able to pay for college, so when the DACA came into place, it was a huge relief. There was finally a program that accepted me, an undocumented student. DACA means everything to me. Not only do I have financial aid for my college tuition, but I was granted the opportunity to work legally. How lovely. To find a job and be able to make money for my needs. DACA has become a reassuring force for many students, like myself, whose only desire is to be given an education in order to become a successful factor in this society. I'm proud to be Mexican or heritage, but I'm also proud of America's great educational system. DACA has given me the opportunity to dream on my own white picket fence one day. This is interesting to me because I always, as an Italian American myself, always reference, which is so obvious, when people are proud of their heritage, especially newer immigrants, to see the pride that they take in their heritage and the fierce patriotism they have for America. That was what we saw in our community when I was growing up. Fiercely patriotic Americans, while very proud of their heritage. And that's who people are. That's their authentic self. Patriotic Americans, proud of their heritage. We want to make, as was said in this, to be legal. Ana Sanchez, she's from Elgin, Texas. I don't know if they say Elgin in Texas. Like many other beneficiaries of DACA, for once I have been given the opportunity to pursue my dreams by attaining higher education and a job. I am Ana Sanchez, an 18-year-old undocumented student who was brought to this country when I was only 2 years old. Due to the living conditions of my home country, my parents decided to immigrate to the United States to offer me and my sister much better education and a better future. Growing up, I was aware that I had been born in Mexico, but I did not know the effects of being undocumented until high school. Now that I'm older, I realize I was who I am in the eyes of the government, and it saddens me to know that people believe these misconceptions of us. I mean, ever since we arrived to Texas, my dad has risked his health and life by working under dangerous circumstances just to earn enough money to provide food and shelter for our family. When it was announced that DACA would be available to people like me, my family did not think twice. We all knew it was an advantage and a precious opportunity the country had given us. Finally, we're given the chance to prove that we are part of this country's future and this country's success. Because of DACA, I'm able to say that I am a part-time student and part-time staff for an after-school program. I'm 2 steps closer to becoming a businesswoman and a teacher, and that gives me hope. Sadly, however, the new administration has posed threats that would make my hope and my dreams unreachable. If the permit is taken away, our hard work will become worthless. I want to give back to this country, so I yearn Congress to give me that chance. Many of the stories that I've been reading so far have been, but not all, but have been about people in our own hemisphere. But it's important to note that many undocumenteds are from the Asian Pacific region. Many are from Africa or from the Caribbean. That's our hemisphere, but not in terms of Latin America, but in terms of the Caribbean. And so some are even from other places that are not necessarily ethnically diverse. Here's one from Ha Yun Lee. Today, I want to tell you about Han Yun Lee. When Han Yun was 6 years old, her family came to the United States from South Korea. She grew up in Bloomfield Hill, Michigan. Here's what Ha Yun says about her childhood in the United States of America. Quote, I was fortunate enough to grow up learning that diversity is encouraged and differences are not just tolerated, but welcomed. Ha Yun was a good student and committed to public service. In high school, she was a member of the National Honor Society, received the Principal's Academic Achievement Award, and was an Oakland Activities Association Scholar Athlete. She was a member of the track and field team for all 4 years of high school. Ha Yun is now a senior at the University of Michigan, majoring in English. She volunteers with the Red Cross and is the co-president of an organization called The Supply. The Supply raises money to help students in Nairobi, Kenya, to attain an education. And she's from South Korea, all-American girl, now a co-president of an organization that raises money to help students in Nairobi, Kenya, to attain an education. As co-president, Ha Yun has expanded the organization's efforts to include volunteering locally with Detroit charities. Ha Yun was also a policy and programs intern for the Asian Americans Advancing Justice Center. As Ha Yun completes her last year of college, she dreams of becoming a lawyer to advance civil rights. Ha Yun wrote me a letter and she said, quote, although I'm legally labeled as an alien in this country I call home, I believe I'm an American. I believe this not solely because I live, work, and study and contribute in this country, because I believe in the core values of Americans share as a nation, liberty, justice, and prosperity. Ha Yun and other dreamers have so much to contribute to our country, but without DACA or the DREAM Act, they will be deported back to countries they haven't lived in since they were children. Will America be a stronger country if we deport people like Ha Yun? The answer is clear. That is a question that has arisen throughout. We asked it earlier. Will America be a stronger country if we deport? Fill in the blank with the name. But I love what Ha Yun has said. I believe this is not solely because I live, work, and study and contribute to the country. I believe in the core values all Americans share as a nation of liberty, justice, and prosperity. We keep getting more. Okay, here is, oh no, this is His Holiness again. Tomas Evangelista is a DACA recipient from Auburn, California. At the age of 2, he came to the United States from Mexico with his mother in search of a better life. Unfortunately, after a year of being together in the United States, his mother passed away from cancer. Can you imagine? His grandparents took him in, and he grew up in Northern California when he ran cross-country and track at Pacer High School. These all-American kids, it's just a beautiful story. Following his high school career, Tomas received an Associate of Arts in Social Science, and in 2014, he completed his Bachelor's of Arts in degree. Today, he works for the nonprofit organization Latino Leadership Council. He also intends to attend Lincoln Law School in Sacramento, California, in spring of 2018. Tomas co-founded California Dreamers with fellow DACA recipient Doris Romero. They seek to change the negative narrative surrounding immigration with facts. They want to change the narrative with facts, the truth, and through sharing personal stories. The ultimate goal is to encourage immigration reform and to establish a pathway to citizenship. Vanessa Rodriguez. My name is Vanessa Rodriguez, and they all call me Undocumented Dreamer. Undocumented because I was born south of the United States border, and Dreamer because that was the inherent last name that my parents gave me when they risked their souls to give me a dream, a better future. They called her Dreamer. Called her Dreamer as her last name. I've lived in Texas for 12 years, and for 12 years I have known no other home. My father works in construction. My mother works as a housemaid. Their hard work and humble occupations have given my family a chance to do more and dream higher, a chance that made me the salutatorian of my class and a recipient of the State of Texas Student Hero Award. However, their work only granted me a chance to dream, not a chance to accomplish. Only the government could grant me that, so for years I lived under the notion of fear and uncertainty. Dreamers like me kept their dreams and secured them in a box called limitations. It was not until the arrival of DACA that things began to change for us. DACA enabled us to pursue and achieve more. For me, it meant an opportunity of pursuing higher education, obtaining a job, and acquiring something called temporary security. 1 year of this security from deportation was what made the beginning of my dream a success. I was free from fear of deportation that enabled me to gain confidence in my abilities. People sharing their stories in such a clear way, and in many cases, very well-written way. A few weeks ago, I finished my first semester at the University of Texas at Austin, which is a very hard school to get into, by the way. And although I was a full-time student with 2 part-time jobs, I still managed to obtain an outstanding GPA. DACA made all these accomplishments possible, and it's been the difference between simply existing and living a dream. As the time approaches for a new administration, the fear is starting to become more evident. The uncertainty, and anxiety is real. My question to Congress is, when will you unchain my dreams? When my only hope is taken away alongside DACA, or will you fight to protect students like me from deportation? It's not even a fight. It's a simple decision. It's a simple decision. It's been made easy by separating it from the more complicated and controversial aspects of comprehensive immigration reform, which we must address. It's about the children. It's about the children. Alonso Reina Rivarola story goes like this. I always remember the day that DACA was announced. It was June 12th, 2012. June 15th, 2012. I was camping for a retreat with friends, students, and colleagues from the Mestizos Arts and Activities Collective, a youth participatory action research collective in Salt Lake City, Utah. Excuse me. At approximately 10 a.m., the group took a break from the agenda, which I used to go back to the tent to check on my phone. When I turned my phone back on, I was taken aback by the number of text messages, missed calls, and voicemails I was receiving. Buzz, 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 she writes. The DREAM Act was passed. The DREAM Act has passed, shouted a close friend of mine, a fellow dreamer, in a voicemail. I was excited, yes, confused by her words, knowing at the time no DREAM bill was being debated in the U.S. Senate or Congress. However, as confused as I was too adrenalized at the possibility that a DREAM Act boxcar bill had made its way into becoming law. After returning her call, we shared our feelings of excitement and confusing regarding the matter at hand. Then she informed me President Barack Obama would be making an announcement at any moment. As soon as I hung up, I read through a few more text messages, called my mom, and ran outside the tent to inform the MAA family about the news. Within minutes, can you just imagine the excitement? They were out camping. Within minutes, all MAA participants crammed ourselves into 2 cars in Little Cottonwood Canyon. We turned into the radio, eager to listen to President Obama announce the program, which we all have come to know as Consideration of Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA. My story is one of hundreds of thousands of DACA stories across the United States. We all have different backgrounds, first names and last names, interests, journeys, and goals. However, we all have one thing in common. We are all American dreamers. Since DACA, I have earned an honors BS in sociology and master's in education, in educational leadership and policy at the University of Utah. I'm an active community member and most recently been honored to serve as a DREAM Program Coordinator at the University of Utah, where I seek to support undocumented students with or without DACA to access, persist, and achieve higher education in the country we all call home. way they write these stories and the excitement and the anxiety that they convey is really something that the printed word may not convey, but I hope at least the record will show the cumulative effect of all of these stories. I wish you could see them. A person who has seen more of them than anyone honors us with his presence in the chamber. We all get emotional on this subject, but no one has put more brain power and passion into this subject than the distinguished senator from Illinois. He has been served in this body for a long time, so we know of his leadership and his values. But for all the years he's served in public life, before Congress and since, and in the House, and now as a leader in the Senate, the Dreamers have